Good evening and welcome to Slippery Rock University's Power of Stories speaker series. My name is Keisha Booker and I serve as the Assistant Director at SRU. On behalf of the Office for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, we welcome you to tonight's program. Storytelling is important to DEIB initiatives as stories have transformative power that allows us to see the world in a different way than we do if we just encounter it on our own. Stories are an entry point to understanding different experiences of the world. Stories reveal truths, encourage exploration, generate curiosity, and more. They become a connective tissue between time, people, cultures, and experiences. Before we begin, let's first lay out ground rules for tonight's program. We encourage all to participate through active listening. We would like if you are not speaking that you have your microphone muted, but your camera's on when applicable. When the time comes, we ask that you speak from your own experiences. Do not be afraid to disagree respectfully. Participate by choice. Do not invade others' stories. The goal is not to agree, but to gain a deeper understanding. Speak up, but not over each other, and be conscious of your body language for both the participant and yourself. Today, we will be speaking on the importance of seeking mental health counseling, especially within communities of color. Tonight's speaker is Bertha White. She is a licensed certified social worker, clinical, LCSWC, in private practice in Maryland and Virginia. She is a certified clinical trauma professional therapist and certified dialectical behavior therapy professional. Ms. White conducts child, adolescent, and adult psychiatric diagnostic evaluations, diagnosing and creating treatment plans for a variety of mental health disorders and circumstances that negatively impact the quality of life. Ms. White is the owner and CEO of Agent of Change, LLC, Mental Health Services and Resources, and founder of the Harambee Youth of Southern Maryland, which focuses on Black youth, mental health, and cultural awareness and involvement. As a Maryland board-approved clinical social worker supervisor with over 30 years of experience, Ms. White educates, promotes ethical content, cultural sensitivity and humility, personal and professional growth. Ms. White recognizes how difficult it can be to travel this journey of making changes to navigate life's obstacles. With compassion and understanding, she works with each individual to help them build on their strengths and attain the personal growth they're committed to accomplishing. She integrates complementary methodologies and techniques to offer a highly personalized approach to empower each client. Bertha White, LCSWC, and Agent of Change, LLC, are recognized among the top mental health experts throughout the Maryland region, and are featured on top doctor interviews, which are seen on CNN, Headline News, Bravo, Fox News, Oprah Winfrey Network, MSNBC, and she is published in Your Health magazine. Ms. White is a member of the Tri-County, Maryland alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and a charter member of the National Council of Negro Women Incorporated, Charles County section. Ms. White remains faithful, humble, and dedicated to her efforts to be an agent of change. Ms. White will be joined in conversation with Dr. Pulver from SRU's Counseling Center and Ms. Tara Oglesby, who serves as the Clinical Relations Manager for Agent of Change. At this time, I'll turn the presentation over to tonight's speakers.
Thank you so much, Keisha, for that introduction. I appreciate that. Thank you, Slippery Rock University, for the invitation, and thank you all for joining. We only have an hour. So we want to explore the power of stories and definitely delve into the importance of seeking mental health services. I'm encouraging you all again to enter your questions or concerns in the Q&A because we want to make sure that we highlight what's important for you. Let me just say that everyone has a story. It's about the impact of past and present circumstances. But to better understand the importance of seeking mental health services, we want to first acknowledge the circumstances that can put you at risk. Consider Amber's story. Amber is a 21-year-old college student who really lost her momentum amid the pandemic. She was a freshman, and when she arrived at college, it was just a shock to her system. She felt like she was just thrown into this atmosphere without a safety net. She was alone and didn't have any connections. Amber didn't know anyone on campus. She wasn't involved in any activities. Most of her time was really spent alone and studying. By the end of the year, she had completed 36 credit hours and had earned a 3.5 GPA. She planned to go home for the summer, recharge, and then start her sophomore year with energy and involvement. But the summer didn't quite go as planned. She lost 5 family members to COVID-19. She witnessed blatant police brutality and injustices, and her mother was furloughed from her job. Amber said, you know, her thoughts were just swimming and racing. She couldn't slow it down. She couldn't rest. She cried all summer long and didn't really know if she was going to be able to go back to school and make it. But she did. Let me just say it's common for us to experience these changes in life that impact the way that we sleep. It may interfere with your eating habits. It may change your mood, and it may also change the way that you function. But be aware when things, you just simply have to know when things are not quite right with you. Because when we're impacted by these kind of risks or risk factors for 2 weeks or longer, you're already starting to develop the signs and symptoms of mental health difficulties. And it's really time for you to seek some help. It's going to start impacting your studies, your work environment, and even your relationships. So do not ignore when you're experiencing negative or distressing thoughts. Question why you're losing your appetite and you're not sleeping well. Acknowledge being overwhelmed, stressed, or even worried. Now, you know when you're putting yourself at risk and you're engaging in activities that you would normally avoid. If you've been abused or neglected, or you're experiencing any of these signs and symptoms that you're seeing right here on your screen, especially suicidal or homicidal thoughts, along with self-injuring behaviors. At this point, it's really time for you to seek support. Either seek and utilize the supports that you have or seek services that you need, especially from a licensed mental health provider. Make yourself a priority here. Gain some insight about what you're experiencing. Get some help to support you in managing what you're experiencing, balancing your life, and making matters so much better for you. I just want to say too, if we can go to the next slide, please. Okay. I just want to say as well, you all are not alone. What we know is over the last 3 years, mental health conditions have truly worsened across the nation. It's not just any one person. It's not just any one group. It's affecting us all. But the group with the highest rate of mental health challenges are between the ages of 18 and 25. What we know is most recently, there have been quite a few studies and research that has been done to let us know that there are about 60% of college and university students across the nation that are experiencing mental health difficulties. As a matter of fact, their symptoms and behavioral responses meet criteria for at least one mental health diagnosis. So let's talk a little bit about what anxiety and major depression looks like. These are the 2 most frequent conditions that we're really afflicted with. After we start talking a little bit, and I want to catch up here on the slides, I'm sorry. Okay, so after we speak a little bit about the symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder, and we speak a little bit about the signs and symptoms of depression, what I'd like to do is take a little break, and that's just a pause so that we can be sure to address any questions that have been submitted in the questions and answer section. And we're going to have Dr. Culver just, present to us questions that have been submitted prior to this presentation. So as I said, generalized anxiety disorder and major depressive disorders are the two most common afflictions that college students are going to experience. I think we need to be aware that generalized anxiety comes out of us in several different ways. It's going to come out cognitively, it will present itself emotionally and physically. In terms of cognitive symptoms of generalized anxiety, it would look like periods of racing thoughts, overgeneralizing, and that is taking a story or a situation and wondering about the wouldas, the shouldas, and couldas until you create this narrative that never even happened. You may be disorganized. You may procrastinate. All of these things are symptoms, the cognitive symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder. And then there are the emotional pieces. There's the fear, there's worry, there's sadness, there's restlessness, and there is agitation. And in terms of the physical type symptoms, if you find yourself fidgety, you're experiencing GI issues, you're picking your hair, you're pacing, all of these are signs of the physical symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder. Now remember, if you are experiencing any of these symptoms for 2 weeks or longer, it is time for you to seek the support of a licensed mental health professional. In terms of depression, depression is a period of time where you're not just sad, you're not just feeling lonely, but you're isolating yourself. Your thoughts have changed. You may be experiencing suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts. We need to acknowledge and be aware of what the changes that are happening in our body. For depression, recent studies showed that at least 1 out of 3 students experience major depressive disorder. That's about 75% of students nationwide. What we know is 44% of American college students report having symptoms of depression. And in addition, suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death among college students. Right now, I think would be a good time for us to just pause and engage in a dialogue based on the questions that have been entered in the Q&A. And then we'll go over to Dr. Culver so that we can answer any questions that she's received. And again, we really want to focus on acknowledging the signs, the symptoms, the risk factors of developing mental health disorders for college students, college and university students. So Mrs. Oglesby is the clinical relations manager for Agent of Change, and I'd like her to start with any questions that are in the questions and answers section.
Good evening. Thank you, Ms. White.
You're welcome.
We do not have any questions that have been entered in the chat.
Mhm.
The chat is open, so throughout this presentation, if anyone has a question or statement they would like to submit, by all means, please do enter in the chat. But we don't have anything at this time.
Dr. Culver, would you please present just a few questions that were previously entered?
Yes. So one of the things that you highlighted and emphasized was the importance of when we are experiencing this risk factors, especially when it's been for 2 weeks or more, reaching out and seeking services. And one of the questions that people would like for you to speak more on is how can someone overcome the mindset that something has to be really wrong before wanting to seek mental health services?
Mm-hmm. That is an excellent question. Well, again, some of these changes that we experience that lead to disturbances in sleep and concentration, in eating habits, are common. But if you've experienced these symptoms and behavioral responses for 2 weeks or longer, that's when you know you need to seek help. Be aware of the changes that are occurring within you, but 2 weeks or longer. Symptoms and signs are developing at that point, and they're going to impact your functioning with relatives and relationships, on your job, and again, even in your studies. Dr. Culver? I think you're on mute.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
So thank you for going more into that. And so similar, some people wanted to acknowledge and look at that when it comes to seeking services, we do at times see differences and related to communities of color and how often they seek services. So would you be willing to speak more to about why you think communities of color do not seek therapy or services, especially, for instance, maybe having identified those risks?
I think there is this generational kind of definition of what mental health is and when it's important to seek mental health. We've been under the impression that seeking mental health indicates a weakness. It indicates something's wrong with you. It kind of brings shame and brings guilt. But we have to understand right now what we're seeing is a change, a shift in the way that we're thinking, and we don't see mental health issues as much of a stigma right now. We are getting more help. What we see is the number of mental health conditions that folks are experiencing is causing them to seek services. So there's been a rise in the services that folks are receiving. Although the rise in the conditions that we're experiencing are outpacing the resources that are actually available. Nonetheless, I would like to really inform folks to be aware that there are mental health therapists, licensed mental health therapists, who are culturally competent and culturally connected. And we understand what it is that you are experiencing. It's important when you go to a therapist's office that you be heard and understood. And so it really helps to have someone that looks like you and may understand your experiences, to be present to support you through your journey. So I would say, in terms of the stigmas that exist, they're dropping. We're understanding how important it is to take care of our mental well-being. It's just as important as your physical health. So, to a roundabout way of answering the question, this is how we get beyond the stigmas that we've dealt with for so long. Recognize that there's stigmas. And what's important is you make yourself a priority here. Any
Ms.
other
White,
questions?
we have a
Yes.
question in the chat,
Oh, wonderful.
and it relates to what you and Dr. Culver were just speaking about, overcoming stigmas. This question is specifically targeted towards the Black male. So the question reads, as a Black male, how do you overcome stigmas and oftentimes family pressure and conditioning that seeking help is weak?
That is a very interesting and common question. In my practice, I treat several men who are experiencing exactly that. The expectation was that I have to have and present this strength. I'm not allowed to feel what I feel. I've been raised not to feel these things or acknowledge these things, to kind of suck it up and keep it moving. But again, when you recognize that your life is being impacted, it is time to get the help that you need. Now, I'm going to just say, it's a difficult step to take to seek treatment. for our Black men, for our Black women, and anyone else. It is a difficult step to take to seek treatment. Imagine, and some of you might be aware of this or has experienced this, going into a clinical therapist's office and talking to someone you've never met before. You're expected to be transparent. It can make, since we're talking about Black men, feel shame, feel embarrassed, feel like you don't connect with them. And so they withdraw, but they're not functioning well. Again, remember, despite what the expectations are of you, no matter what your color is, no matter what your race is, you are a priority, despite what the expectations are. Acknowledge and validate what you feel. It doesn't really, it's not about someone else. It's about you. It's not about what anyone else thinks. It's about you. So I would encourage everyone, and I would definitely encourage Black men to take the step that you need to take along your journey to improve what's happening in your life, in your overall well-being.
Continuing on a little more related to that question, we definitely appreciate you letting us know that regardless of race or orientation or sex, that we need to make ourselves a priority. I want to go back to specifically the Black male, and we talked about conditioning that oftentimes happens in the Black community, that seeking help is weak. Do you have any suggested responses that a person who is seeking treatment could provide to those people who may be part of the problem in bringing the stigma that all you need to do is talk to Jesus or pray or things of that nature? Do you have any good responses that a person could say?
A person could say that is experiencing the difficulty, or what a person could say that's listening to someone express their difficulties. Which are we saying?
What a person could say if they were being challenged or made fun of by family members.
I see.
Because we have the
Okay.
conditioning that seeking help is weak.
Well, I mean, you could joke it off and say, well, I'm getting the help that I need. What you doing? What you gonna do? You know, I'm getting the help that I need. That's one thing that you could say. Or you could say, my mental health is just as important as my physical health. If I had a headache, I would take an aspirin. I've been feeling down and I'm not functioning the way that I need to function. We should all be so open. We should all get the help that we need. You may want to address it that way. You may want to just simply acknowledge, you know, I know a lot of people think that way. I know a lot of people believe that just by getting mental health services, you know, that shows a weakness. However, that's the most powerful step that anybody can take. You may want to say something like that.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No other question. Oh, no, I just got another question.
Oh, good.
How long does it take to work through depression and or anxiety? Give us a number. How many months? How many days? How many weeks?
Can't do that. It depends on the individual. It depends on your circumstances. It depends on what the onset of your generalized anxiety is, whether it was in childhood, whether it was because of circumstances that you're experiencing right now. If you were to take the step to engage in clinical therapy or with a licensed mental health professional, and you were consistent, and you use the supports and the tools and the strategies with intention, you may start to feel a difference sooner rather than later. We're individual, and treatment is tailored specifically for us. So I can't say a general number, but I would encourage anyone that's going for therapy to try to commit for at least 3 months, then reevaluate. So I can't say a specific amount of time, but I would encourage you to give it about 3 months and reevaluate.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay.
And one other question that was related to something that you mentioned earlier. You talked about the importance of people prioritizing their needs. It's about them. You want to find a counselor that you're comfortable with, that fits for you. And so one of the questions that was asked is, what should a person do if they do not feel comfortable or feel that their therapist or counselor is the right person? And in particular, what should they do when they're a person who has social anxiety?
Okay, that is an excellent question. When someone comes to my office, we review consent forms. It is important for me to mention that there are several reasons why we would terminate therapy. Either they moved out of my service area, or they met the goals for which they set to accomplish, or they find that I'm not a good fit. The purpose is for you to connect with someone that you can relate to, because the relationship that you have with your therapist is the most important factor to determine the outcome of your services. You need to develop a rapport. You need to feel comfortable with the person that you're talking to. And if you don't, you have the right to choose someone else. This isn't about the therapist. This is about the help that you need. So feel comfortable and confident saying, I'm sorry, we're just not a good fit. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Yes. So the second part was addressing how someone with social anxiety can do those sort of things because the social anxiety already makes it hard to talk with other people.
It most certainly does. Sometimes it helps to engage virtually. But the goal, one of the goals for someone that is experiencing social anxiety is to get them out of their house. And so we would start in a safe place, which is their environment. We would start treatment there and move slowly. Treatment is supposed to move at your pace. So move slowly until she gets to the point where she can step or he can step outside of the home and engage that way. So with social anxiety, you don't have to suffer alone. You don't have to suffer alone. Therapy can be offered virtually, and you're in the comfort of your own home, the safety of your own space.
Thank you. Those are all of the pre-questions we have at this moment.
All right. So let's move on to, we're going to bypass depression because we've talked about depression. Let's move on to race-based traumatic stress and race-based traumatic injury. Just take a few moments. Just take a few moments. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, and I think we're going to stop here. What I really want to bring to the forefront is the fact that although race-based traumatic injury or stress is not something that's listed as a diagnosable condition, but it is real and it does exist. It's very similar to what one might experience with post-traumatic stress disorder, except it's very specific to the emotional pain that we experience, in particular the Black community, when we've been exposed to racism. If this moves, these symptoms of anger and hostility, and aggression or depression. When these symptoms last, when they last, and they prevent you from being involved, these thoughts and these experiences you re-experience, you have intrusive thoughts, your startle response has grown, then it's time to seek immediate treatment. Again, from a therapist or counselor that you can connect with, who understands what you're experiencing, who can give you some helpful guidance, who can connect you to resources so that you can express what it is that you're feeling, because that is the most important thing. You do not have to hold it in. You're allowed to feel what you feel and express it. The worst thing you can do is ruminate and harbor, because it's like an emotional balloon that's inside of you. You continue to blow into that and it's going to pop. Be aware of what you're experiencing and how it affects you. Understand that there are changes within you and that you need to talk about. They need to be heard. You need to be validated. You're not alone. What you're experiencing is real. Any questions so far?
No questions in the chat.
No questions in the chat. All right. If we can move to the next slide, please. And I tried to make this presentation as concise and condensed as I could. Again, what's important is that I address the circumstances that are important to you. So as we move forward and we talk about top barriers that prevent us from seeking mental health services, we would think that it is the stigma of the public or financial barriers, maybe the lack of mental health professionals and services, limited education and awareness, or racial barriers. But the top barrier is you and me and how we feel about seeking mental health services. That's what prevents us from utilizing the services and benefiting from the services. Our own personal stigmas, that's first, before finances, although that is significant. You know, especially during this period of COVID, where there's a loss of jobs, and there's a loss of security, it's difficult to pay. It's difficult to cover, you know, the cost of attending a college or university. What we know is people are accessing mental health services sooner than college, so they know what to expect and what to look for once they get to college. But still, there are so many that don't know what that looks like. So the lack of mental health professionals, number one, and knowledge of where to go, how to seek it, where it's located, that's a barrier. And then there's limited education and awareness around what mental health is, around what the risk factors are, understanding when those risk factors have developed into signs and symptoms, and understanding where to go, how to seek help, how to help yourself. And then there are those racial barriers. Again, we just talked about what is expected of us, those stigmas that, you know, have been upon us for generations. Knowing where to find help that you can connect with are all barriers to seeking mental health services. Next slide, please. It was Dr. Anthony Jones, the Chief Diversity Officer at Slippery Rock University, who emphasizes creating touch points. And these touch points that he spoke of are avenues and resources for students to engage in so that they're not alone. Places like programs that involve something that you're interested in with like-minded people that you can relate to, feel comfortable with, and connect with, activities rather it be on campus or off campus. A touch point should always be mental health services. And then there are churches. This is all about creating community supports on campus and off of campus to use as strategies and tools to help us to, maintain control over what we're experiencing, balance our lives out a little bit, and experience well-being. Touch points, utilize touch points. Next slide, please. Okay. While we're utilizing these touch points as students on campuses and universities, there are certain aspects and expectations of the mental health services that are on campus or provided on campus. Earlier, I said that the amount of folks that need access to mental health services is outpacing the availability of those services. And so in terms of retention and providing mental health services on campuses, there are so many colleges and universities that are taking the lead and promoting mental health services. They've created these kind of wellness cultures. They have action plans in place that students can use. We're talking about multifaceted approaches that look like providing apps, wellness apps, that looks like developing support groups, that look like information and sensitive information about mental health being listed on a syllabus. It means reaching out. It means the counseling center should be available. Its address should be posted. It should be introduced when potential students come to visit. These are ways that we can express, colleges and universities can express the seriousness, the fact that they take mental health seriously and want to be supportive. We need to reach out more. We need to check in with each other more. We need to make these services available, and it is going to take the entire community. We have colleges and universities such as Spelman and Morehouse University who are lobbying to bring in more funds to support mental health services and all of the resources that are needed. So I'm encouraging you all to speak up about what you need. Speak up about what you need. Reach out to others who are doing the same as you. Tell those that are making the decisions what you need and expect nothing less. Next slide. Oh, we're almost done. Okay, we have 40 minutes for questions and conversation. I want to remind everyone, if you're experiencing any urgent symptoms like suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts, and self-harming behaviors, or persistent feelings of sadness, hopelessness, worthlessness, and chronic difficulties managing your life, now is the time to seek mental health services. Do it immediately. You can reach out to your campus counseling center. You can call the new National Lifeline, which is 988, or you can, go off campus and seek a licensed mental health therapist to get the services that you need. Sometimes we have to use the supports that are available for us and seek the supports that we need. Remember, you are a priority, and if you're experiencing any of these serious symptoms, make sure that you reach out for help. Again, we want to open for questions and answers, after which I would encourage everyone to use the QR code and go to the link that provides the evaluation for this presentation so that it can get back to me so that I understand what it is that you need. It helps me to help you. So we're going to go ahead and just start our dialogue. Anyone that is interested, anyone that has any comments, please join in. And we'll use the last 20 minutes or so, just getting a better understanding of what we need and what needs to be done.
Thank you, Ms. White. We've got some
You're
great
welcome.
questions in our chat.
Oh, good.
I believe you indicated that race-based trauma is not something that can be officially diagnosed. Forgive me if I misheard that. But given that statement, as a student or even professional staff, if I am experiencing race-based trauma, how do I explain that I am? What are some of
I'm
the
sorry.
words?
Okay, so first, I am not saying that it doesn't exist. It does. I'm saying that it's not noted as a mental health disorder in the DSM-5, but it does exist. And so if you're experiencing these things and you do need help and you do want to reach out and you just really don't know how to describe it, that's okay. When you go to see a mental health professional, the very first thing that they want to do is listen to you. Hear what it is that you're saying. Try to understand what it is that you're saying. Help you and educate you so that you know what you're dealing with. You know how to use strategies. You know how to cope with it. You know how to decrease the intensity of it. So you don't need to know exactly how to describe it. All you need to know is something isn't right.
Okay,
What
great
you're
answer.
seeing on TV is sticking with you. You're crying. You feel helpless against it. You don't have any hope that things are going to change. You just simply need to talk about it. Now, let me say, just because you're going in to see a therapist, again, does not mean that what you're experiencing meets diagnostic criteria for a mental health condition. You could just be experiencing difficulties through life's experiences. Could be stress, could be death and loss, could be a number of things that don't necessarily meet diagnostic criteria, but they're significantly impacting the way that you function.
Thank you.
I
We
hope
have
I
a
answered.
general question, actually two general questions. The first is about sessions. When I go to speak with a mental health professional, what is a typical session like and how long are the sessions?
Okay. What happens here at Agent of Change is that someone is referred to us and they give us a call. We do a phone consultation so that we have a general understanding of what their problem area is. Whether or not we accept their insurance and really if they've been COVID tested, and then we try to schedule. When someone comes in for the very first time, what I need to do is review consent forms. Consent forms help you to understand what to expect in therapy from myself and what's expected of you. It helps you to understand that if I am not a good fit for you, I understand and will support you and refer you to someone who may be a better fit. It talks about and clarifies what your copays are and all of these things, what the expectations are. After we do that, I begin what's called either a child, adolescent, or diagnostic, or a child, adolescent, or adult, psychiatric diagnostic evaluation. It helps me to understand where you've come from and how you ended here, how the circumstances develop to be what they are. As we go through that process, we talk about the presenting problem, family history, education, how things are going on the job, how things are functioning for you socially. It's all encompassing, which is what a clinical therapist does. What we know is that your mental health difficulties will spill over and impact every aspect of your life. It has the ability to do that. So someone comes in and we start the process. I'm not going to rush anyone through their story. And so if we don't complete the diagnostic evaluation during your first session, as long as I'm clear and you're okay with me and speaking with me, we schedule a second time and then we resume. Again, I'm not going to rush you through your story. It's most beneficial when you feel comfortable here. So generally speaking, you shouldn't expect to be in a therapist's office for any longer than an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending on the circumstances. But generally, that's the amount of time that you're going to spend. You'll get homework assignments. You would be expected to try to do these homework assignments are strategies that you've learned, coping skills and techniques. They're homework assignments so that you can use them outside of my office. When you leave my blue door, I'm not there. So it's important for you to practice these things so that you know how to encourage yourself, to calm yourself, to balance yourself outside of this place. So therapy can be multifaceted. But again, you should be offered what it is that you need. It's tailored specifically for you, not for everybody, just you. So you want to feel confident and comfortable coming into a therapist's office and expressing your journey, telling your story so that you can get the support that you need. If you have more to say after that 1 hour session, you should be encouraged to prioritize what it is that you want to say. So the next time that you come in, we start with what's important for you, and then we work our way through. Generally speaking, when someone comes in my office that has gone through the evaluation process and the diagnostic process, I start off with, so how are things going for you? I want to listen and I want to help. That's what you should expect.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're
Now,
welcome.
Ms. White, let's say that I get over perhaps the stigmas associated with seeking treatment.
Yes.
I overcome my own self-doubt and negative self-talk. How is it that I can actually trust that now that I've gotten over those hurdles, how can I actually trust that everything that I say to you stays between us?
Okay. Confidentiality is paramount here. No one is going to be transparent and reveal their dark secrets if they don't feel confident that their information is safe in the room. Encourage and inform about your policy, whatever your policy is on confidentiality. Help people to understand they have rights if they feel their confidential information has been violated or revealed. When I'm doing an initial consultation, an initial evaluation, one of the topics that we discuss on the consent forms is how to file a complaint. You need to know that I am serious about what I am doing. Your information is held confidential, and I have a governing body that you can reach out to if you feel I've done something unethical. So that's how we maintain confidentiality. Now, in groups, that's a little more challenging. There are still consent forms that are, shared with the group, requires their signature, and requires them to understand if there is an incident an instance where they have revealed information about what happens in that group, they're discharged from the group. You can't feel confident and comfortable revealing your information and receiving information if you feel it's going to leave the room. So that's how I handle confidentiality. My staff handles confidentiality the exact same way. The information, I would want my information to be secured. We use an electronic health record that is encrypted and secured. We don't email any critical information, any personal information. We follow HIPAA regulations. We follow COMAR regulations. We respect confidentiality.
Are there any situations where you might have to break that confidentiality?
Yes, that is a good question. Here's more information that I revealed during the intake and periodically through the period of therapy. It is not uncommon, and if you remember Amber's story, it's not uncommon for people to experience situations that make them think every now and then, it crosses their mind, what would the world be like without me? That does not mean they intend to harm themselves. That is an indication of how severe, probably major depression is. And we need to start there and work our way down. But I am very clear that if you express to me that you're experiencing suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts, you have a plan and you intend to do it, my license privileges me to send you to the hospital. I don't need your permission. You can hate me today and be alive tomorrow. I am okay with it. It's just to keep you safe. So that would be a time when I would break confidentiality and tell the medical professionals what they need to know to help you. That's when I would break confidentiality. There are other limits to confidentiality as well. If you are a child or adolescent in particular, if you report to me that you've been neglected or you report to me that you've been abused, I'm a mandated reporter and I have to report that as well. Otherwise, all of the information that you share is confidential.
That's definitely comforting. I want to pivot just a little bit. As a therapist, you are involved in so many different situations with your clients. But as a therapist, how do you take care of your own mental health?
That's a loaded question. I'm no different than anyone else. And I struggle to maintain an exercise routine and, to eat healthy and to balance work and life and shut things down at a reasonable time. I struggle with that kind of stuff, just like, quite a few other people. But what I have to remember is in order for me to give my best, I need to be my best, which means I need to give myself some time. I'm worth that. Prioritize my time, organize my activities and everything that I need to do, plan time for myself. That's what I have to do. I have to do it much more frequently, but these are the steps that I need to take. This is important so that I pour into myself enough to be able to give to someone else. I need to take care of me. And as a clinical therapist, I'm just going to be honest. The work can be heavy. I treat people that not only suffer with generalized anxiety disorder or major depressive disorder, but schizophrenia, borderline personality disorders, conduct disorders, and all. So it can be kind of heavy. I have had to complete a emergency petition and hospitalize folks. It is heavy. I make myself available for urgent matters. People call in when they need to call in, but I have to set boundaries and limitations. I set boundaries and limitations just so that I can take care of myself and balance things out a bit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was the last question that we have in our chat thus far. So I'm
Okay.
going to turn it back over to Dr. Culver at this time.
Thank you. So these questions kind of relate to what you talked about earlier, specifically on the slide where you talked about barriers. When you were talking about barriers, one of the things that you mentioned were the limited resources. And so one of the questions that was posed previously was, how should institutions of higher education best allocate what are often limited resources in providing mental health services on campus?
Well, yes, resources are limited. Yes, we hear plenty of reports about funds that are going to be available, but we have to decide what's most important. I'm not suggesting that other activities and areas of service aren't important, but mental health is important. Sometimes you just may have to cut back somewhere else to provide what's needed. Really, you can make changes with, again, the way that we conduct and inform students of the mental health services that are available. We can be more sensitive and validate these symptoms. We can reach out and, be aware of any changes that a person is experiencing. So when funds aren't available, there are still so many other things that can be done, but lobby. If your school is not getting the funds that it needs, lobby. Advocate for what it is that you need. That's what I would suggest. Advocate, lobby, create groups for yourself, get everyone involved, normalize the importance of maintaining mental health. Mental health, overall well-being, that is including mental health and your physical health, actually your spiritual health as well. So be active, advocate for what it is that you need. If you feel that more funds should be appropriated for your needs, students have the power. You're paying for this. You have the power. So make the difference. Bring in professionals with you, bring in professors with you, all that feel that mental health stability is paramount. It affects every aspect of your life. Plus, dropout rates are extremely high when mental health concerns are not addressed on campuses. So I would say again, find the funds somewhere or you'll lose the funds.
Thank you for that. So many great strategies and ways we can begin to advocate. So this is another question that reconnects us to the slide where you talked about barriers, and specifically you were talking about the prevalence of stigmas. One of the questions that was asked is, why do you feel the stigma over mental illness is so deeply seated?
It is generational. We can go back in history and be reminded of all of the violence, hurt, shame, stripping of dignity, worth, confidence. And then we just have carried that with us. Actually, what happens quite often is when you grow up in a home with a person that has a mental illness, but may not have been diagnosed with it, you're exposed to their signs, you're exposed to their symptoms, you're exposed to a mom that worries all day long and calls you 5 times a day, and you're exposed to that. We become, so much of what we become is a result of our rearing. And so I would say this is how it continues First of all, it's generational. We know where this started. Although we do try to educate ourselves and be much more aware, still the stigma is significant and it follows. You have to really want to change. You have to really want to do something for yourself. You have to really want help to move away from these stigmas, but they do have the capacity to keep you stuck in your space. I hope I answered that question.
Yes, thank you. So this question kind of takes us a little further related to the beginning of our conversation, where you really emphasize the importance of reaching out, seeking help, especially related to those risk factors you talked about. If you're experiencing them for 2 weeks or longer, this is the time to get help. Can you speak to, though, when we notice that a friend might be struggling or might be in need of mental health services, how do we help or encourage them to seek out mental health services when experiencing mental health difficulties?
That is an excellent question. Be aware of, if not changes within yourself, but definitely changes that you see in others. If they're starting to miss class, you haven't seen them around campus as much, and you run into them, where their dorm room is, just check. I was thinking about you, just checking to see if you're okay. And be willing to listen. You don't ask someone if they're okay and not listen to their response. Reach out. It's okay. I noticed you looking a little sad today. Is everything okay? Professors, even, you're very distracted. Your grades seem to be falling. I want to be of as much support as I can. Is everything okay? Do you need any support? How can I help? That's what I would say to a friend. How can I help? Recognize when you don't have the ability to do so and refer them to someone that's qualified to do it. Just ask, are you okay?
Can you speak more to maybe how you would go about making a referral? Like, how would I refer someone?
You can encourage someone to seek mental health services. That's a referral. Or you can call yourself and be self-referred. You don't have to have been referred by your doctor, depending on your insurance, but by your doctor or through a hospital or through the campus counseling center. You can do it yourself. Not everyone needs a referral. I don't need to accept referrals. Just call me. That's it. If you're nervous, which happens quite a bit, and you need to come in with a parent or some support, be aware that we're going to be talking about very personal and private issues. But if you want someone to come here with you, sit in the lobby with you, and then wait for you, we could do it that way too. So reach out. You can call yourself, self-refer, or be referred by someone else. A hospital, your doctor, or whomever.
All right, I have one last question that was submitted earlier, and that was, how do you manage your mental health with the demands of work and classes, as well as being someone's child, friend, and all of those other things?
It is the most difficult thing to do, but you're not going to be okay for anyone if you're not okay. It is not selfish to take a few minutes for yourself. Make yourself a priority. That's never been a selfish thing, because you can give the best of you when you do that. And so you may have to say no to a few things to afford yourself an hour when you get home to do exercises or what have you. Plan it. Look at you, just plan it out. You may not be able to exercise every day, perhaps every other day. You may want to just spend a half an hour connecting with friends, talk to family, go to church. This is how you balance these things out. Sometimes it's important as well to help the family members that surround you to do the same thing. It's one thing when we try to de-stress and we try to keep our lives balanced and we have chaos all around us. So encourage folks at home to do, our kids, our spouses, to do the same thing. Plan these things out. And if you can't always find a moment for yourself, perhaps you can plan something for the entire family. That could be helpful as well. When you're balancing things out, trying to make yourself a priority, trying to de-stress, and trying to handle it all without becoming overwhelmed, you need to take a break. And these are some ways that you can do it. Anything else? No? Thank you all. So, do we have something else?
Just a quick question, kind of as a piggyback to what you meant. Let's say that the family can't get together, we can't all operate as a unit. Are there any quick and quote unquote easy things I can do if I feel I'm getting overwhelmed? Meditation, breathing, a 15-minute walk. Do any of those things help?
Absolutely, they help. But when you feel overwhelmed, that's because you have stuff to do. Prioritize your list. What's most important? Write that stuff down. Get it out of your head, put it on paper. Yes, walking is fantastic to clear your mind, help you to deep breathe, help you to relax. Walking is mentally healthy. It provides mental health stability and physical health stability. Yes, by all means, do that. Yeah, the only way that you can really address feeling overwhelmed is to prioritize and decrease your caseload, your workload, your involvement in activities. You got to learn how to say no. And that's not a bad thing. You know, you say it with respect. You got to say, no, I'm sorry, I can't. Or, yes, I can do that for you, but I have competing priorities in this stack of papers right here, and I won't be able to get to yours until Friday. It's okay to advocate for yourself. It's okay to be truthful. There are expectations that we're expected to meet, but when things are rolling around in your head and you're overwhelmed and you're overthinking and you can't sleep at night and you wake up just nauseous from it all, write things down, check things off, plan things out. It will ease that feeling of overwhelmedness. When you can see what it is that you got to do, when you can see I get a break in an hour, when you can see, oh, I don't have anything to do right here on this day, I can just rest and relax. And when you see over here, I have this assignment that's due, I need to start working on it right now. That just decreases those feelings of stress and worry and panic. Plan it out is one way to deal with it. Organize it. Keep a list. I mean, I tell you, I don't know what's happening from one moment to the next moment if I don't look at my notes, my list. Excuse me. So that's what I would encourage. This is how you try to get beyond feeling overwhelmed. Use these strategies. That's what you learn when you're in therapy or you're in counseling. Strategies and techniques that will help you along the way, help to decrease all of those matters that are impacting your life, including feeling overwhelmed. That is a significant symptom of anxiety. So we really want to work on it. You'd be surprised at the everyday, really simple things that we probably would normally do that can be used for strategies to balance out your mental health. Take a shower. It'll calm you down. Use loofah gloves. Stimulate your skin. Wake your skin up. It'll calm you down. When you get up in the morning, open up the shades and the curtains and let the sun shine on you and encourage yourself. I'm going to make it through the day. Don't be unrealistic. We all have a lot going on in our lives. That's true. But remind yourself that you can find this balance. Two opposite things can be true at the same time. Your life can be overwhelming, and you can use strategies to de-stress yourself at the same time. So that's what I would encourage. You're welcome.
Excellent tip.
I want to take this time and thank you both for speaking to us today. So if we could all give a great reaction, round of applause to Ms. Bertha White, as well as the moderated conversation coming from Dr. Culver and Tara Oglesby. We really appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
I do want to say, for those who may be struggling and needing assistance on campus, our counseling center is located in Rhodes Hall. Their hours of operation are Monday and Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., as well as Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And there are emergency hours available each day. So once again, thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it. And our next Power of Story series will be on Thursday, March 30th. We will be discussing dreaming big and failing forward. Thank you all.
And if I may, Keisha,
Sure.
Don't forget to go to the QR code and complete the survey of the presentation. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for joining.
We've also